Hello and welcome on behalf of WVU and our esteemed panelists today. And we are thrilled to bring you second in the series. We're going to be speaking today about stewardship, advocacy, fundraising, what is working now with our terrific panel. I am Cyndi Greenglass, Senior Vice President, Strategic Solutions at OSG, and also very proud to be an instructor in the WVU Masters of Science program in Data Marketing Communications, and very happy to be part of the faculty as well. Today we have with us three fabulous panelists, and I'm going to do a quick introduction of the three of them. Their full bios are available on the WVU website where this panel discussion was hosted, so I hope you'll take the time to go and learn more about our panelists. We have with us Alicia Lifrak. She's Executive Vice President of the Gabriel Group. Alicia joined us and Gabriel Group in 2018 after extensive work in the nonprofit sector. As Executive Vice President, she oversees all business operations related to nonprofit, higher education, and philanthropic industry. She's driven by a focus on developing and implementing strategic client solutions. Prior to Gabriel, she spent 22 years working for the Boy Scouts of America in a variety of executive leadership roles, including Chief Operating Officer, Chief Development and Chief Marketing Officer, and finally, CEO. We're also joined today by Mike Fulton, and Mike Fulton is the Director of Asher Agency in Washington, D.C. Mike is also an instructor in the WVU Master of Science program, IMC, and as Director of the Asher Agency, he has more than 30 years of business networking, government relations, and communications experience. Before joining the agency, he spent 22 years in public affairs, utilizing congressional and federal agency meetings, grassroots campaigns, creative events and videos, surveys to enhance advocacy activities and achieve tremendous government relation results for his clients. One of his specialties is working with institutions of higher learning and education, and he's assisted dozens of schools across the country as part of a consortium working on common interests. Healthcare is another area where Mike has excelled. He has lots and lots of experience, and we do look forward very much to hearing what he says in the area of advocacy. And then I would like to introduce Dana Hines. Dana Hines is Vice President of Membership Marketing for Membership Consultants. Dana has literally written the book on membership marketing. Put a little plug in there for you, Dana, for your new book, and has served as the membership manager for a large botanical garden where she was bitten by the membership bug. She founded Membership Consultants, and for over 30 years, Dana has been helping programs grow and succeed using direct mail, digital marketing, and face-to-face sales. She's written 2 books, Membership Development and Action Plan for Results, and Membership Marketing in the Digital Age. She's involved in many and numerous conferences, trade shows, and speaks actively with the American Alliance of Museums, Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and on. And she loves baseball, which we all hope we will see soon when we get to the new normal. So thank you to my panelists in advance. And I'm going to kick us off with Alicia. Hello, Alicia. Thank you for joining us. I know we're only a short 2 weeks in to what we're calling our new normal, but would you share with us how have you've been seeing any positive signs within the nonprofit sector as a whole, and what are you seeing if there are any trends emerging in this nonprofit sector?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because just yesterday, the Nonprofit Times released a study that was conducted by Charities Aid Foundation. They did a survey of about 544 global and local charitable organizations, and that was conducted the last week of March, so very much within the midst of our current reel. 97% indicated that they had some form of negative impact already from the coronavirus. pandemic. And 67% indicated that they have already seen a decrease in contributions. So it's happening in very real time. We have a number of organizations who are experiencing it immediately. But at Gabriel Group, we have about 150 nonprofit clients, and we're seeing all of that too. We're certainly feeling the stress with them. But we're also seeing some anecdotal, I'll call it anecdotal because we haven't done a survey or a study of it, but we are seeing some positive signs. We've conducted some emergency appeals for a number of our clients that are yielding really exceptional results. We are seeing communication strategies that are taking place that are getting the word out about sort of innovative program delivery, innovative service delivery. We've seen some really outstanding results. In fact, I have a very large client that I work with. They said they're raising more money right now in the last couple of weeks than they've ever raised before. All through the appeals, they had a 97% increase in digital giving in the last 2 weeks. And they are, their challenge that this particular organization is working with is that even though they are raising this huge amount of money, it's coming in the form of emergency disaster relief. So it's a restricted gift. So in the midst of this huge fundraising windfall, they're also doing furloughs and laying people off within the organization. So they said they're really, the challenge is it's very complicated. The other positive trend that I'm seeing, and again, this is anecdotal, planned giving is getting a lot of attention right now. I have one client who last week alone closed 15 gift expectancies for bequests, total over $1 million each. So there are some really significant thoughts going on in the charitable industry around how people want to make a meaningful contribution to their community, both now and in terms of legacy gifts. So I think there actually are some positive things happening within the philanthropic community, but that doesn't overshadow the fact that it's coming out of a very stressed position. So I certainly don't want to come across as a Pollyanna, but there are good things happening, and there are good things happening within charities. Even beyond fundraising, a lot of our clients are experiencing and driving innovation just in terms of they can't deliver their program in the way that they always have. And so they're finding a new way to reach out and connect with their communities. So I think a lot of those things will have lasting impacts, and I think will benefit both the organizations and the communities, despite the fact that this will ultimately have a very long tail and a long impact on all of our charitable institutions. It doesn't have to all be bad. For those who are communicating effectively, we are seeing some positive response from their donors.
That's great, Alicia. It's nice to hear that there is some positive momentum and trend in spite of the very difficult situation we all face today. I know too that there's so much kindness going on, and many people we've been talking about in our communities are showing more kindness and gratefulness for those things that we have and wanting to share with those who may not have what we have today. So thank you. Amongst all this distraction, and there's a lot of noise and distraction, it's very hard for us to focus. And so if you were speaking to the fundraising community today and you said, what should I consider doing now? Where would you recommend that they focused their energies during this really disruptive time?
Sure. Speaking of distraction, this, I guess, one of the joys of working from home, literally the minute I started talking is when my neighbor decided to mow his lawn. So I apologize if my open windows are making it sound. So just let me know if I need to get up and shut those. But to answer your question, I would say that short term, most organizations really need to focus on operations right now. They have to figure out how to get, not unlike a lot of our own households and families, you have to figure out how to get from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next. So right now, the focus is on keeping your programs and delivery up and running if possible, keeping your staffs employed, and continuing to communicate with your donors and your constituencies as regularly as possible with relevant and empathetic messaging. Making sure that your donors know what you are doing to meet this need, especially if your need has increased during this time. Don't just assume that they know how busy you are. In fact, the reality is for most of our nonprofits, well, maybe not most, even those that are closed, even those that are affected because their institution may be shut down, the reality is many of them are busier than ever. And so don't assume that your constituency knows what you're doing or how you're working to create a workaround. So I would say paying attention to keeping the doors open, planning for the day that the doors actually do reopen in whatever sense they do, and staying front of mind for your donors to make sure that they know that you are thinking about them. And again, it doesn't all have to come in the form of an ask. In fact, I would suggest that it shouldn't all come in the form of an ask, but using this time to develop some stewardship communications and talk to them about how important their contributions have been, how meaningful their gifts are, and connect some of what maybe their prior gifts have done have allowed you as an organization to continue to persevere through this unprecedented time. So that's what I would do short term. I think long term, it's important to keep in mind kind of there is a new normal that's got our short term of kind of how we're all getting through these couple of weeks. But the reality is, I think, as it does with any kind of period of severe disruption, innovation and change comes and sticks with us. So there are numerous examples through history of where those types of situations have taken place. And I would say this will not be any different. How we raise money, how we communicate, how we deliver our programs and services will probably be forever altered. So thinking long-term about how you can take what you're learning through this time period and apply it, the strongest organizations will utilize this to not just have it be a holding pattern, but really to employ how they go forward and maybe change some things. Face-to-face meetings are pretty much out of the question these days, but they will reconvene. We will all be connected again at one point or another. But in the near term, using Zoom, using communication platforms to get in front of your donors is certainly a viable option. Big event fundraising though, walks and galas and golf tournaments, there may be a really long tail of suspension of those. And so how your organization works to raise money in absence of those and how you connect with your donors where they are is going to be really important long-term, to not just assume that a switch is going to get flipped and everyone's going to go back to what we've always done, because what we've always done may not work in the months and years ahead. So figuring out where your donors are, how you get to them there, which at this point, they're all at home. So utilizing kind of in-home delivery methods, mail, telemarketing, digital, email, all of these methods, minus email and digital, telemarketing and mail probably don't sound very innovative, but all of a sudden it's the best way to get your message in front of your donors. So some of your innovation may be looking to how you did things in the past and how you resurrect some of those things.
That's great. I'm going to ask you one quick question.
Yes.
And that would be, are you seeing your clients doing surveys of their constituents and to understand what's important to them during this time? Is there more of that being used than there has in the past, or do you see that as a good way of not only engaging, but getting some good feedback as to where they should focus?
Sure. I think there's been some informal surveying being done. We have not deployed any formal surveys, although we do have a number of clients that do that type of survey on a regular basis. And whether or not we incorporate some of the realities of what's going on right now, we're certainly doing it with messaging in terms of how we talk to them and the tone. Whether or not we start asking very specific questions around coronavirus impact, is still sort of up in the air, because I think none of us are really sure if we're building a survey today that gets deployed in June or July, what does the world look like? What are we talking about in those times? We want to make sure that we still sound relevant, that we don't sound like we're talking in March and April terms. So,
Sure.
but I think staying in touch with and communicating with your donors in a way that gives them an opportunity to provide feedback is really, really important. And so whether or not you do that through a formal survey, whether or not you do that through social media dialogue, utilizing your organization's Facebook page or LinkedIn, if you're sending out emails just to check on them, but making sure that that communication has the opportunity for a two-way mechanism, I think could be a very powerful tool, where it doesn't come across that you're just talking at them, but giving them an opportunity to give you feedback as well, could be very, very useful. Not the least of which, hopefully if they respond, they're going to tell you really valuable information, but even if they don't, they know that you at least took the time to ask them. So, and I think that carries a lot of weight.
That's great. Thank you, Alicia. A couple of questions that we've received as we transition over to Mike. I want to let everyone know you can send questions into chat, and when we're done with the formal panel discussion, I'll moderate any questions that we get for any of our panelists. So thank you, Alicia. I'd like to welcome in Mike Fulton. Mike, a pleasure to have you. And we are hearing from the government every single day. There's so much that we are seeing and hearing of what's going on, and we have great interest in what our elected officials are doing. And the big question I'd like to start out with is, how have you and your clients adjusted to this inability to meet face-to-face with elected officials, government officials, the media? Our assumption is that so much of this takes place in their offices, in the legislative buildings, on the Hill. How in the world are they adapting, and can you give us some examples of how that's working?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, because I think communicators, advocates, and fundraisers are going to play a huge role in helping us recover through this difficult time. And I really salute WVU and Cyndi, you, for moderating today's panel. Literally on March 10, my wife and I were with a client, Mr. B Potato Chips, at the USO Gala at the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, D.C. We were with celebrities, the Secretary of Defense. It was a very, very exciting and memorable night of military patriotism and honor. And I think everyone in the room was very concerned about the backslapping and handshaking that was going on that night with this upon us. Literally the next day, it hit the fan as elected officials started seeing what was coming. It was already happening in Kirkland, Washington, and in some other parts of the country. We were getting cases, and people started shutting things down and asking people to stay home, and it's now ratcheted up. So literally overnight, from March 10 to 11, it hit. Well, at that same time, you had Congress, state legislators, city and county governments holding sessions in person with constituents trying to make their case for their needs. And our clients were no different. They did see the pandemic coming, and there were relief bills that were underway. And immediately I surveyed my clients and touched base with all of them about their needs. And so in the higher education arena, we had people who were concerned about in-class operations and moving to distance learning online. They were concerned about what would happen to scholarships, graduation ceremonies, all these different things. I have a federal contracting client who was concerned about the safety of their workers. So they wanted the government to allow them to telework. And would that be difficult? Would that need to be in law, or could that be done otherwise? We had a hospital client that has a very robust graduate medical education program. And they were concerned about the reauthorization and funding of that program, which had already expired. Could they keep their residents, their new doctors in training involved in their care and treatment in their community? So we had to leap into action and connect with legislators about the CARES Act that was signed into law just a few days ago, $2.2 trillion. Well, we were able to get the teleworking issue worked out through administrative activities. Higher education was well taken care of in the CARES Act, and the medical education program received a 2-year reauthorization and a double the funding, because I think it spoke to the needs in the pandemic. The timing was right for this request, and all the teaching health centers worked together in coalition with our hospital weighing in with our legislators, that it all clicked and happened in a positive way. I would say this is a time, a lot of times I am the one saying government should be something that all of us in communications and fundraising look at. And often people ignore the government opportunities. They think there's too much red tape. They think it's too difficult a maze to navigate. Obviously, I've been here in Washington for some years. I know how to navigate the process, but it changes literally every year, and it changed significantly on March 11. So I've learned a lot of lessons through this whole process with my clients, and what we're looking at now is how can we continue that two-way dialogue with elected officials at all levels to make sure we can adjust and get our clients' messages in front of them. This is definitely a time we want to engage government.
Well, thank you, Mike. I remember my first time on the Hill. I came with a group from the Direct Marketing Association, the DMA, and we came to visit congressmen and women and senators to talk about the importance of direct marketing as an industry. And, I remember being shepherded into the waiting room, and then, being invited into the senator's inner sanctum office and sitting with a couple of aides and feeling rather awestruck, I have to say, and seeing the flags on the wall, and some of the celebrity politicians are celebrities to some of us as well. The pictures of people they're shaking hands with global leaders. How do they have the same impact on people when you can't invite them into your office that way, and you don't feel that either as the constituent who is trying to visit, or as the government official who is trying to show their whoever they're meeting with, how important they are?
Well, I think it's really important to continue to communicate with elected officials and their staff. And things have moved online rather nicely to websites. Their websites have online forms that you can submit. They actually do not like to get paper mail because it needs to be sanitized before it's delivered there, due to a ricin experience they had some years ago. So now most of our communication with elected officials is electronic when we're not there in person, and of course we can't right now. And even the members of Congress are not in Washington right now because of the pandemic. Some of them have been diagnosed with the virus, and others are worried about it contracting it. So online mechanisms, again, going back to old school, phone calls. You can, when you email a member of Congress, you can still tell your story. You can bring about your call to action. You can attach pictures, fact sheets, white papers, infographics. Don't do the New York phone book. They're not going to ever read it. Time is, be more quick and to the point, and then ask for a follow-up, because the follow-up is a key. like Cyndi said, she went to Capitol Hill and she visited. 90% of the people who interact with their members of Congress never bother to follow up with a letter, a thank you, an email, checking, did they sponsor the bill that we talked to them about? Did our provision get included in a measure, whatever. And so that's a big role that I play, is follow up. And of course, in communications with journalists or in working with your clients and with fundraising with individuals or corporations or foundations, you wouldn't just put your request forward and never follow up. Same thing in advocacy. You need to follow up and follow up efficiently. Some groups have used, they participate in a member of Congress's telephone town hall meeting. Or they can ask for a conference call or a Skype session with a staff member. They're willing to do that. They're all learning as we are. There aren't enough groups actually that are working with the members of Congress and state legislators and local officials on how they can go through this. We spend a lot more time, thank goodness, on professional development than the staff people and members of Congress do. So they are learning from us in a good measure.
It's great advice, Mike. Thank you. And follow up, right? That's, follow up certainly applies regardless, not just in advocacy, but think about how important it is to communicate, follow up, and stay engaged. I have one more question for you I'd like to address, Mike, if you will. Have some federal government funding programs have to come to a halt as a result of the pandemic? And are they being refocused somewhere else? So are we seeing that at all levels of government, there's some places that we're seeing that halt?
Actually, I've seen government be more proactive and more communicative during this period of time. And I think that's a really good thing. And it's not just the health-related agencies or law enforcement or Homeland Security. It's all across the board. So some of the agencies have been understanding that deadlines need to be extended for grant submissions and things of that nature. But I scan the Federal Register and grants.gov every day, and it is chock full of grant opportunities, partnerships with federal agencies, ways to become involved in federal advisory boards, et cetera. So government is a lot, open and operating. Even though many of them are teleworking, they are working actively to administer government, be responsive to people, and try to carry out what's in the CARES Act and try to be responsive to businesses that have been impacted, nonprofits, other, the many people who've been unemployed or underemployed during this pandemic.
Yeah, I guess I said I had one question left, but I do have a follow-up for you, if you don't mind. I'm feeling like the media here. And one more. This is unprecedented, and we've all said we're living through living history. It's being made around us, and we are part of it, and we all know things will be different moving forward. What do you see? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but with all of your experience, what do you think the long-term outcomes of the pandemic could be on advocacy, on federal funding, and on contracting, maybe even opportunities? Is there an upside to think about when we come out the other side of this that may be to the positive of what we've all learned?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you consider that the Congress and the president just enacted a bill, the largest in history, $2.2 trillion. Our discretionary budget for the federal government, all the agencies of the federal government, is $4 trillion a year. So $2.2 trillion in one bill and they say that they're working on another. And we're following that very carefully. And I wrote a column on LinkedIn to that effect. And I sent it to each client and said, this column is directed at you. I need you to think outside the box for what we need short-term and long-term in higher education, federal contracting, food and beverage, nutrition, all across the board. We need to think about what we need in this country. So a lot of ideas are being floated right now. There are going to be winners and losers in this recovery. And it's our job to help give our clients the upper hand and the voice, the seat at the table, so that they can have their say and we see where we go from here. So I see a lot of positives coming down the line.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you also for being such an active instructor and a alum of WVU and participating in the master's program with the WVU College of Media. Mike also contributes to multiple op-ed publications, including The Hill, Campaigns and Elections, Bloomberg.gov, PRSA Tactics, and the Charleston Gazette Mail. So feel free to follow Mike along as we continue this journey together. And again, please send any questions that you have, and I know Mike will be more than happy to answer them. I'd like to welcome in Dana Hines. Dana, we are going to talk membership, and so much has happened in membership. We're talking about all membership organizations and institutions, and this you've been involved in for 30 years, as we said. And in your career, have you ever seen a time like this? And how have things changed in the membership world with this pandemic versus maybe other difficult times like the 2008 crisis or other challenging times?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Cyndi, thank you, and Stephanie for organizing this. It's wonderful, and thanks to WGU as well. So, you know, I've been doing the membership thing long enough that I can remember, obviously, 9/11, the Great Recession, and going even further back than that, some other stock market, you know, declines that people were worried about. And then, you know, on a local fashion, we've also lived through floods and hurricanes and things like that with some of our clients that were localized. I would say the big difference is that we're all impacted simultaneously this time. Even though it's a little different from one city to the next, we're all going through this together, as they say. So that is, it's just much more robust. I think the thing that separates any of those crises from today, at least from a membership marketing situation, is that we have social media and we have Zoom and we have other ways of staying in touch that has really kind of lifted everybody out of this, you know, difficult situation. We've all been able to do things like this and share information much more easily. And in the membership world, staying in touch with your members is vitally important. And so there's been so much going on. When we first started feeling the effects of all of this, I think it was only 3 weeks ago, but it seems like a century ago already. Alicia and I were involved in another webinar, and I was just looking back at my notes from that time, and our recommendations in that seminar was communicate, keep going, and plan for the future. And the first one, the communicate recommendation, has really been taken to heart by a lot of the organizations that we deal with. And just to back up a moment and let everybody know, we do membership work for largely visitation related organizations, so zoos, museums, botanical gardens. We also do some work with associations. All of these organizations have to stay in touch with their members, and so communicating has been so important. And a lot of them have really taken up the creative challenge and stayed in touch with their members with daily behind the scenes walks with the animals at the zoo, or one of our clients here in St. Louis is doing, the St. Louis Art Museum is doing a piece of artwork every day where they, the curator has written a little description and something about the artist. And I think we're all learning a whole lot more about whatever the subject matter is of the organizations that we represent, just because they've all been doing such a great job. And actually, we've been posting some examples of that on our Facebook page, just so everybody can see what everybody else is doing. And, you know, it goes beyond just keeping people entertained and their minds off of everything that's going on. I think a lot of these resources that have been put out there are great for people who are trying to, you know, educate their kids at home without necessarily being teachers. So I really, really, really think it's fantastic how everybody has picked up that challenge of communicating and staying in touch and being relevant, you know, to their members in a time that's just really unprecedented.
That's great. Thank you, Dana. Again, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Alicia at the top of the program. We are incredibly distracted, and there's so many different priorities that are being put upon us, both professionally and personally. I'm a membership professional. I'm in an institution that's closed. I'm bombarded with a million things that we're all trying to prioritize. Where would you focus? Where would you recommend your membership of professionals focus at this time?
Good. I think our focus in membership is cash flow for our institutions. In that very first week, practically all of our clients' sites closed down. So there were no people coming through the doors, paying admission fees, shopping at the gift shop, dining at the cafes. All of that was gone. And so the only thing that's left, or practically the only thing that's left, is membership. So it's almost like we have to, even though we're working remotely, we all have to do everything that we can to keep that cash flow going. So in the membership world, that is definitely a monthly renewals. Our members sign up for an annual membership. And, you know, if you think of any organizations that you belong to, usually their renewals happen on a monthly basis. So that was our first recommendation. Keep those going. You know, that's a way to keep those dollars coming in. We've told everybody, you know, adjust your communications, because you have to explain that, yes, we know we're closed, but we need you now more than ever. A lot of places have offered free months of membership so that you don't miss out on, you know, the month of April or March or whatever, so that people feel like they're getting their money's worth, if you will, but also putting that kind of tug at the heartstrings messaging in there. Then we've had some other clients who have, you know, really jumped on. I think everybody's got a question about, you know, if I'm not a food bank or I am not a medical related charity, is it okay for us to be fundraising? And the answer to that is yes. The people who are your members, no matter your mission, they care about you, and they care about the animals, and they care about, you know, the gardens or the art, and they want to support you. They've demonstrated that commitment to you in the past. And so now at this difficult time, we do have to, you know, make our case and say we still need to feed the animals, and we still have to be out there doing what we do on a daily basis. We can't just walk away and wait until everything opens again. So you need to tell those stories, and you do need to be doing additional appeals. So, you know, some of our clients that have taken that advice to heart and gotten mailings and emails out there, they're getting a pretty resounding response. So it's good to know that, you know, there are people, these members are behind you and willing to support in this time of need.
We have a question that came in from one of our listeners for you, Dana, and I thought I'll just put it out there for you now. How do you suggest creating value for members when everything is digital and may therefore be open to the entire community? How do they feel special as members now?
Well, I think they will feel special when you open your doors again, but, you know, some of the communications might be for members only. Definitely the communications that are going out there, I think people are probably sharing with everyone. So that's not necessarily, you know, a membership benefit at this point. But you know, there are some, you know, activities and lectures or whatnot that you could be doing that just do go out to your membership audiences. So, you know, this is a time when we all have to get creative and create content and you know, just things that will appeal to people now and in the future. So, you know, I think people, even the people that are transactional at a time like this, they're feeling a little bit more philanthropic. So they might not be as focused on what's in it for me. It might be more of what's in it for the institution and everything that that institution means to me.
Do you find that individuals who are members don't make a distinction between fundraising and being a donor and being a member? Is that a distinction we need to make more now?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people do. I mean, they're very latched into being a member, and they've usually been asked during, you know, at least during the giving season of the holidays and year end. But they're also willing to step up at other times too. So I think they do understand that distinction. And they do know that, yeah, I'm going to be asked for my membership renewal. I might also be asked for an additional gift. I might be asked to upgrade my membership level or my giving level. So they're pretty, I think, you know, understanding of the situation and the needs. So yeah, they're open to that.
That's great. I have a question I'd like to ask to each of you, and Alicia, I'm going to start with you. What should you not do right now? Are there some for sure don'ts that are not resonating based on the current situation we find ourselves in? So Alicia?
Sure. Well, I would start by saying the first thing to not do is don't disappear. Don't assume that it's not the right time or that asking for help would come across as insensitive. I would recommend the disappearing act because you're trying to be respectful. Will put you months, if not years, behind the curve later on down the road. So I would start by saying the first thing not to do is don't disappear. I would also say that the other thing to not do is, while there are very real challenges and harms and difficulties going on within organizations and within families, don't over focus on the negative aspects. Don't focus on the doom and gloom. Find the positive, even in your messaging of making an ask. Find the way to be the voice of calm, the voice that brings your community together, that makes your constituency feel trust and confidence that you're going to be there to help steer them through. Because I think that in any challenging times, and it doesn't matter what your institution does, when things start crumbling around us, the natural psychology of a human being is you're going to look to the institutions to give you faith and confidence that it will still be there. And that institution could be your place of worship. It could be the museum that you belong to. It could be your school and your PTO. Whatever your organization is, whatever your community is, you're going to look to those voices to help guide you through this process. And so I think as organizations that are nonprofit and charitable entities, they're philanthropic entities, they're going to play a very big part of that voice and leading us all through to whatever that next chapter is and what it looks like. So communication, staying in front of your folks, being positive, being upbeat. I think that those will generate a very significantly different outcome for organizations on the back end than those who do the opposite.
Don't disappear. I think that's a good takeaway, Alicia. We know you won't disappear for sure. No. Mike, what would you have some advice for our advocacy and our government folks during these times? What not to do? You'd say don't disappear. What else should we not do?
I think there's several good mottos that we ought to have. And I use this with clients a good bit, and it's like measure twice, cut once. Here we want to think twice, act once. This is a sensitive time, and we need to, I mean, we come up with a lot of great ideas at our agency and in our communities. And the one thing you don't want to do is leap into action too quickly, test it off your colleagues, test it off, and this has been a very collaborative time where the sharing and collaboration among agencies and professional colleagues, even competitors, is at its height. I think that's very positive. I would say be patient, because we have clients that had a launch of a new program, the introduction of a new person, or something that was totally unrelated to the pandemic and what's going on in the economy right now. And be patient. It can wait. This will subside. Things will never return to the old ways, and that might be good. But exercise patience and don't try to rush things too quickly. I think those are two of the things I would advise our viewers today.
Thank you, Mike. Dana, advice on what not to do in membership today.
Okay, and this is something that I would suggest to all of our membership managers out there. And it might not be in your control. You might have to fight, but it's worth fighting. Don't let the institution steal your budget. The largest piece of any membership budget is usually the direct mail acquisition campaigns, the kinds of things that it's your marketing budget for a membership. And because that's like the number 2 chunk of money after staff, a lot of times institutions will come and grab that chunk of money, however much that is. And I think this is one of the lessons that some people learned during the Great Recession. And that is, if you stop marketing, the people will stop coming, the dollars will stop flowing. And so really guard that budget that you have, because that's an investment in your future. And if you take that away, then it will be a self-fulfilling situation where you're worried about decreases in income. And if you take away the ways of generating that income, then it all will come true and it will all come crashing down. So hold on to that budget and really make the case if you can.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up to that. Some of the ways you can make the case that you've seen, because, it's great idea. Don't let them steal your budget. Some of us in marketing are better at KPIs or, key performance indicators than others. Some of us may not know how to make a strong case.
Uh-huh. Well, the other recommendation that I've been giving to people is, if your stats and your reports aren't up to date, use this time to go back and create, some reports this year versus last year, this month versus last month, so that you can show people how this is affecting you. And you can also, give them some idea of what a campaign that they may be trying to, take away your budget for is going to be able to create. So, use those numbers, use those stats to make your case. And then just one more thing I would say, what not to do is don't not be prepared for when you're going to reopen. We have some clients who have continued with their acquisition campaigns. Others are kind of holding back a little bit until they know when they're going to reopen. Consider this your own grand opening. It's a grand reopening. And I think there's going to be a pent-up demand. People will have been home for way too long. They need to get back to their favorite things to do, which is go to the zoo, go to the garden, go to the museum. And so you need to be prepared for that and take advantage of this situation. There's a firm that we all rely on in the membership world to give us some really good stats kind of across all institutions. And so far, they're doing these reports on a weekly basis. So far, the intentions of people to visit in the future are pretty similar to what they were a year ago. So I think we have to use that data and be prepared. Don't get caught without, a plan to reopen and to re-engage people as soon as possible whenever we're all given the clear to do that.
That's good advice. Keep focused on, we will reopen. We will get back. Make sure that you're planning for tomorrow and not so caught up in today that we forget to look out our front window, right, and spend all our time in the rear view mirror. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to just go around the horn and ask a final question of each of you. And again, I'll go back to Alicia and ask you as we're going to look optimistically at what lays ahead. So we get off this call and we want to have follow-up. Great advice from Mike Fulton. What would you suggest follow-up be minute one for you after we get off this call?
For what I would recommend as the next thing, I think I would I'd do a couple of things. I would look at all of the activities of what you're currently doing, just to get a sense of where you're spending your time, and then really apply some very realistic ROI analysis against it. So are you spending your time on the right things? Are you doing the things just out of nature because this is what we always do at this time of year? And look at both in terms of the short term of what you're currently doing and then what you have planned for the remainder of the year so that you can readjust in real time and spend your efforts and your energies on the things that are going to yield the best possible results. So I think I would take a look at whatever your resources are, whether it's your budget or your staff or your communication pieces, whatever it is that you have planned or that you're currently doing, take a hard look at it and apply that ROI analysis. I think that goes directly to what Dana was just mentioning in terms of fighting for your budget. If you are not the decision maker, the final decision maker that is, recognizing what are the priorities of the decision maker, who are you making the case to, understand what they need to get out of this, and communicate your need in the terms that they will most understand. It's no different than talking to your donors. Talking to your decision makers, whether it's a board or a CFO or your CEO or whomever, communicate to them in terms that they understand and that they prioritize. So if your CFO is the person who gives you the final yay or nay on your marketing budget, recognize that you are put your spend in terms of what it will yield in terms of return. So that don't look at it in terms of how much we're going to spend. Look at it in terms of if we don't do this, this is how much revenue we will lose. So I would really take this opportunity where we're in this sort of, we call it a slowdown. I'm busier than I've ever been, so I don't feel like things have slowed down. But there is a period of sort of reflection taking place. I would take advantage of that, and let's make use of this time to really analyze all of the work and all of the things that we do. Does it yield the best possible return? I've done 1,000,001 fundraising events over the course of my career. I love them because they're fun and they're great fundraisers, and they're Mike talked about the one he was just at on the 11th. They are really positive PR things. They don't tend to be the most productive fundraisers. They don't yield a huge net return to the organization in terms of dollars raised. So right now, when we're in this period where putting on special events and planning special events isn't where we can put our energies, take a look at which of those events have you been dying to get out of your annual development plan all year? This is your chance. Figure out what to replace it with. How do you redirect those energies to things that are going to get you the best return?
All right, Mike, what would you do minute one after we all get off the call? What would you like our audience to focus on?
Well, I think I would look at opportunities in the short term and the long term. We did, on behalf of a client, do a statewide study, a survey of 600 folks throughout the state of West Virginia, actually. And one of the questions that we asked that was relevant to this call is, how do you get your information right now? And it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. television is off the roof. It's number one by a long ways. Online engagement is very high. As well, you have a lot of folks that have pulled their advertising because it would appear to be tone deaf, not appropriate for this period of time. So it has opened up opportunities for folks in our field. And our agency has counseled some of our clients to take advantage of that opportunity. The other thing is, a lot of people tell us, our clients tell us, we don't have time to put everything down that we're doing, to write a federal grant or to pursue something that takes a little more time and thought. Now is the perfect time for them to become a peer reviewer at a federal agency, or to actually take a stab at working with a professional grant writer or learning grant writing so that they can improve their skill sets moving forward. There are going to be more dollars available. There are more dollars available now than ever before. When this all comes to pass in several years, we're going to be paying the piper, and there's going to be severe cuts at the federal level in all programs except for probably Homeland Security and Defense. So those social service related programs are hot right now, and they're going to remain hot for the next couple years. Then after that, there's going to be a cliff. So take advantage of that opportunity now. Look at read the tea leaves and take advantage. Now is the time.
Now is the time. Well, on behalf of WVU, Reed College of Media, and our panelists, I want to thank you all for joining us. I'll leave you with now is the time. Reflect, reassess, and act. And I thank you all for your hour of our time today.